Thank you, Abe. Thank you very much. I'll probably be watching the Super Bowl replay for the 911th time instead of the Jerry Jones show. But no, that's just me. Welcome to the agency panel. I'm feeling at home. My dad had an agency. His dad has an agency. I'm feeling right at home. Really nice panel here. Tuck Birch is the head of brand marketing at Excel. Shelley Passar is the newly minted Chief Insights and Innovation Officer at Wasserman. And her daughter's graduating from college today, so I have a really good incentive to get her out of here. I can't even pronounce it. John Tatum, the co-founder, chief executive officer of Genesco Sports, and Greg Bush, the president of Bespoke Sports and Entertainment. We got into a pretty good discussion yesterday of there's these two kind of global events coming to the U.S., so I thought we might start there. How much is the World Cup and Olympics impacting your business? I'd imagine you're hiring crazy because of it. I'd imagine even the ones that aren't sponsors of the events are all hitting you up for it. So let's start with Greg. What's the 30,000-foot impact of these events on your business, Greg?
Well, it's coming for sure. I mean, we're trying to, like you said, scale up for those events. They're going to be kind of massive undertakings just in the number of cities, number of venues. So we're doing that right now. There's still some brands that are still trying to figure out their plans, even for World Cup. So we're involved in a lot of those discussions, just trying to map out kind of strategy for that. Olympics is obviously a little further out, a little more runway, but we're even talking, I mean, I think everybody up here has client brands that are already planning for the Olympics, or should be planning for the Olympics. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
John, there's probably more soccer inventory available in this country than, I don't know, ever. So even your clients that aren't FIFA sponsors are interested in riding on that FIFA gravy train to some extent, I think, right? So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think U.S. soccer, we've got a half dozen or so clients that, whether it's Hinkle, which is a new client and partner. American Airlines just did a deal with U.S. Soccer, as well as the World Cup. We did that deal in partnership with Qatar. And there's a lot of ways, obviously, to get in. So, whether it's Major League Soccer, U.S. Soccer Federation, FIFA, CONCACAF, there's individual talent. Our Lowe's client made a strategic decision, a couple of years ago that they weren't interested in spending 9 figures with FIFA. So for a much more reasonable investment, they could get, the number one talent on the planet,
right.
Messi, and that's done, a lot for their business in terms of pro contractors and so forth. So yeah, sure. I mean, soccer and football, global football, whatever you want to call it, it's definitely the world sport.
Well, I was going to go there eventually, but since you brought it up, what can you tell me so far and what Messi's done for that brand?
Well, I don't want to tell you any confidential.
Oh, no, I wouldn't want that.
Especially, I think you've got Home Depot on a panel sometime this afternoon, so I don't see any of the orange vests out in the audience. But but Messi is the Messiah, right? And I think it resonates. Plus, not only is he an all-time scorer, but he's also the number one in assists. And Lowe's is all about their professionals and professional contractors, and so how do you help people with whether it's the pro contractors or whether it's a DIYer like myself. I'm big into.
I want some video of that.
Yeah, you ought to see me plant all around the house. Leanne Tatum loves it. She gives me a to-do list.
Shelley, tell me about what's going on at your place with that. I mean, there's just so much activity when it comes to that sport.
Oh, just tons. And brands finding unique and different ways to activate and bring it to life. So over half of U.S. soccer fans have kind of moved up the scale in avidity in just the last 18 months. And it's so awesome because there are so many events kind of cycling through the U.S. And now with this coming, the Olympics kind of shortly thereafter, that momentum should only continue. So opportunities like what John was just talking about, those will continue to flourish. Yes, there's only one Messi, but there are a lot of eyeballs on the US as a ground that's always been a little bit secondary to the world, but now we have a chance to kind of really show off. I think on the brand side, it's been really interesting because the World Cup is a global entity, a global property, and spending money in that space allows you to activate globally while being in the US and looking at key markets, key locations. So you could have a big portfolio of brands and then focus on a few here, but also digitally and feet on the street in the countries that are participating, you can focus on other brands in those markets. And so that's really giving, I think, brand marketers who may not have had that much flexibility in a portfolio or to target unique audiences the chance to do that. And that just helps the dollars go further. It helps us all kind of continue to support the reasoning around why partnerships really matter. And in a global sport that's growing like this, yes, this is your home base, but you can reach everybody at the same time. So super exciting. A lot of research obviously backing that. But I think it's fun to watch us stand up big teams to go really take this on.
Well, you're the insight person, so let me get back to you for an insight. You mentioned fans moving up the avidity scale.
Yes.
Can you expound on that a bit?
Sure. Young fans, I think, and global fans looking again at the U.S. market, but I think it's 57% of stated U.S. soccer fans. So call it. They're an avid fan, they attend one event a year or so. They've now moved into, I'm engaging with content in and around the sport. I'm following, there is a ton that's associated with Inter Miami, obviously, but also this NWSL is driving this too, right? So they're associating and engaging with the content and stories in and around our women's players, in and around those leagues, in addition to MLS, and then obviously watching, keeping a very close eye on who's going to be competing in the World Cup, especially as we lead up to these matches, which start, this week? So.
Well, kitchen table research is always the best kind. So my kitchen table research tells me, you won't agree with that. My kitchen table research nonetheless tells me that the younger fans I know are much more interested in European soccer than the domestic version. Does your research tell you that as well?
Yes, it does. Okay. It does for the most part. But what's nice to see is there's growth there.
Yeah.
Right, and so you're starting to see that turn, and honestly, I do think it has a lot to do with the Premier League spending time, UEFA spending time and effort to understand American fans too, and then you start to connect the dots. You have a product here, you have the chance to engage.
Got it.
So, absolutely.
Okay. Doc, what's going on at Excel when it comes to soccer? I think everyone's dealing with it at all times, right?
I mean, the crew's covered most of it here. I think the most important point for the marketers in the room is that there are an infinite number of ways, not unlike any other property, to engage with consumers in the global football space. And you've really, really, really got to be purposeful in terms of your strategic approach. And understanding, as Shelley just said, the manner in which you can connect with these audiences is, I mean, people talk about fragmentation. I don't even think that word does it any service these days. It's because there's a million different ways to reach these consumers. So I think we've got to, we're coaching our clients to be really, really purposeful in how we engage in that marketplace, and then obviously storytelling on the back end of that. And are you being additive? Are you enhancing the experiences for these consumers? Because they're very, very passionate places, obviously.
Absolutely. Well, at the risk of asking you who your favorite child is, we had an interesting discussion. It was pretty split yesterday.
Major.
Olympics versus World Cup. Yeah.
Right.
Olympics versus World Cup, which one resounds more in this country? And we'd have to know more about performance to really know the answer. But I'll throw that one out to you, and then I want to come down the line on that.
I think just the scale of the World Cup's going to be pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, it's bigger by definition, right? But
bigger by
beyond
definition,
that, yeah.
Bigger by markets that it's going to engage with, bigger in terms of the overall, I think, global eyeballs and engagement. So no bad answer there, but I would say World Cup.
I'm kind of with you because it's just the Hispanic market alone, and that's bigger along with everything else. Shell?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one interesting thing, so all the reasons that Tuck just gave, but also the World Cup doesn't have some of the baggage that the Olympics comes in as they're anticipating. There's a lot of run-up in conversation about, the infrastructure and, do you leave a city better than you found it and so on. And yes, LA is going to be the world's largest peacetime event. And that will be phenomenal, right? And so with that in mind, I think, we're going to bask in the World Cup now and really be a part of that. But as you turn that corner and as we get closer and closer, we're under 3 years now, I think you'll see the Olympics pick up too.
Okay. John?
I agree with FIFA and World Cup. I mean, you've got 104 matches across 16 markets, 11 in the U.S., 39 days. I mean, every match is essentially a Super Bowl. So you've got 3 Super Bowls a day for over 30 days. And there's 8.2 billion people on the planet. I think 5 billion of them are soccer fans. We all know NFL is kind of the platinum standard here in North America, but the NFL gets 115 million maybe for the Super Bowl.
Good year.
Maybe 120. Yeah, I think the World Cup in Qatar was 1.5 billion watched that one game. So yeah, I mean it's hard to fathom unless, and I don't know how many folks were in Qatar in 22 or maybe New Zealand, Australia in August of 23 for the Women's World Cup, but it's the world sport.
Yeah.
And so I think that hopefully our U.S. team will get their act together and come play. Captain America better show up.
Well, the good news is they got to pass in, so.
We lost to Turkey.
I know.
Turkey.
I know.
Turkey. We're not talking Spain. We're talking Turkey. Switzerland. Like, come on.
Right, well.
We got 340 million people. We can't find 11 that can play the sport.
It's all good. Ducks yesterday, turkeys today. It's all good.
All right.
Greg, let's
Turkey.
get-
Not talking about Germany. We're talking about Turkey. Sorry.
No, listen, they're both going to be massive events, and I think the beauty is that we've got enough window, I think, between them that they both will have the right amount of space to be massive global events for us. But I do think the Olympics presents an opportunity that we obviously know. It's like soccer will be in the Olympics, but we have every other sport. We have men's and women's sports, and I think LA presents. I'll show my age, but I was at 84 Olympics in LA. That market with those games will be absolutely fantastic.
Oh, you're like 4?
We won't go there.
There was a suggestion yesterday that one pulls off the other. Do you see any interconnection there?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree. I think it'll be. I think everybody understands how massive the World Cup will be.
Yeah.
Obviously, the host committees are a huge kind of infrastructure that they're putting in place in each of these markets. I think the people that live in those markets may be a little surprised by how massive these events are and the influx of global fans that will come into their markets. I think it'll surprise some people, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wait and see. Tuck, it's really tough to get a read on the economy right now, and even just trying to write a descriptor for it is pretty tough, and that obviously impacts agencies' budgets and the budgets of clients. So what are people telling you now in terms of willingness to spend and certainly willingness to invest in anything new when it comes to, you can deal with yes, you can deal with no. Uncertainty is always really difficult. So what are your clients telling you about this?
I think you said it there with uncertainty. I mean, I think if we learned anything coming out of COVID and sort of being in this in-between phase of a recession, not a recession, what state are we in with the economy, so on and so forth for the last, 5 years, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's kind of how I think we need to operate as marketers on a day-to-day basis. I think you got to be as prepared as you can be. People are definitely, I wouldn't say pulling back, but people are definitely focused and dollars are being watched for sure. But I don't think we can be sort of paralyzed by the potential of 50% tariffs or 10% tariffs or 35% or 6 months or 1 month or what it is. We got to continue to run our respective businesses, to engage with consumers. And so I think for a while now we've been in this, are we in a recession, not a recession, so on and so forth. And I think we learned coming out of COVID that you've got to just kind of expect the unexpected around each corner and do the best you can when you show up every day.
Shell, any directional stuff in terms of what clients are spending money on, assets or
Well, I think rights holders and brands are very focused on deepening the relationship with their fans. You talk about just even avidity increasing in soccer, but every league is talking about that. It's not just the game day event, but how do I keep them connected between events? We just talked about this globalization back and forth too. If you're not going and kind of setting up shop beyond individual games, keeping that relationship means you're digitally connected, you're layered on top. And in a lot of cases, that can be done very easily, less expensively, and we can actually track it and measure it and really understand what folks are engaging, what they're doing. Are they doing the thing you want them to do, buying the thing you want them to buy? And fans then don't necessarily, so put it on the consumer who's having to make choices continuously now because you're not sure what is happening in the economy. So uncertainty does paralyze the consumer a little bit too, but I would say the one thing we've seen with this generation is coming out of COVID, the absence of things that were available to them from a live perspective, they've made choices. They want to participate. They are budgeting for these things. It may be one or two less, or they're kind of hedging a little bit, but they still want to participate in all of these activities and live as fully as you possibly can. The one-to-one or digital engagement overlay that now could be some of this flexible inventory that could be done more efficiently for brands gives you a chance to continue that engagement basically at no cost to those consumers or fans either, right? So very inexpensively. And of course, yes, there are variations, paywalls, other forms of OTT engagement, but I do think it creates maybe a little bit of a surge there where you might be seeing the big push and some development of new assets for creating and deepening these one-to-one relationships because they kind of extend across borders, they're globalized, and they kind of supersede what we might feel when you're pinching pennies and not able to go to an event.
Right.
Which, building on that, is it's a focus on, these panels, people talk about measurement and return on objectives and all this stuff all the time, and it's, I think it's really a focus rather than an ROI and immediate equivalent value of something.
Yeah.
It's focusing on business outcomes. How are these activities tracked such that we can upper funnel, lower funnel, whatever they may be, but really are focused on business outcomes and the delivery of those to the brand and the business.
Absolutely. John, there was some research late last year that said, predicted rights fees going up, marketing budgets going down. More recently, Deloitte put something out that I think knocked off almost like 1.7 of their forecast for increased ad spend this year. So how's that impacted your business so far? Have you seen that?
Well, we've been fortunate that, I think sports is recession-proof, right? So at the end of the day,
I think it's recession-resistant.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. And but no, I think there's just a lot more opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
right.
I mean,
exactly.
About, right?
So there's there's cricket. There's live golf. There's all kinds of new opportunities. There's a huge explosion, obviously, in women's sports. So there's just more places to invest. And marketing budgets are, typically flat, especially when the, clients are trying to save money. But, then again, you got to spend, you got to invest to build a brand, right? I mean, we've been, PepsiCo has been a client of Genesco's for 31 years, and I worked there, or I was at Tracy Locke 2 years before that, so I've been around those guys for 33 years, and
Did you start with them when you were 4?
Yeah, I did. Good point. And so, it kills me to see that they've gone from like number 2 to number 3, behind Dr. Pepper. And I think a lot of that is because they've reduced their ad spend, and they're not creating pop culture like they did back in the 80s, 90s, et cetera. And so hopefully they'll get back to that. But, in terms of like business, I would say, business is booming, not to paraphrase Antonio Brown, Yeah, I mean, business is going to be great through
the two of
26
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. Olympics, I'm not sure. I think they need to fix their leadership out in California, but that's a different topic. I think Rick Caruso would do a lot better job, but I like Rick, but yeah, I mean, they got a lot to deal with out there with, who knows if there's not going to be another wildfire in the summer of, 27 or even 28.
Or if people are still protesting there for these events.
Or protesting. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more unrest in the summer of 28 than you're seeing in the summer of 25, just because you're going to be heading into another presidential election cycle 2 months later. So the rhetoric is going to be, really volatile.
As opposed to what it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg, how's this indecisive economy we're talking about? Look, you got these two events absolutely fueling this business, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, recession, proof or resistant, but like it's good because people are still spending. I think whether budgets are flat or whatever, it's just the ability to be very creative now. We've talked about, there's more opportunities. I think everybody on this panel spends a lot of time just keeping in front of these things that are happening. We had a panel yesterday on women's sports where, I think in the last 2 years, that whole panel has emerged. So that's just opportunities that we have for different sports, different ways to get in for our clients, where even if it's a smaller budget, there's opportunity there. So, Shelley hit on just the different, media channels for consumption of those sports. So those are opportunities. And then within those sports, everybody is trying to create revenue from the property side. So they're opening up more doors and more inventory that maybe they weren't thinking about before, or they're more receptive to us approaching them with hey, have you guys thought about? And then we have those kind of discussions. And so I just think it's a great time, especially from the agency side, from a consultation standpoint, to just really look across everything and identify just those gaps for our clients.
When they are spending, is there anything new that they are spending on? Whenever I asked that question recently, it's usually about custom digital or social, but you tell me, are there any new assets that they're particularly looking for?
Well, I think a lot of it comes just the creating content, using athletes as influencers, creating stories that are, and again, this word we joked about last night was overused, but authentic to the experience, using these athletes, using these platforms that they have to integrate your brand into that and tell a story. Not only just tell a story about how you're associated with them, but how they're using your product or your service in their performance, in their lifestyle, et cetera. So,
in an authentic manner, hopefully. We've been skirting around the women's issue, so let's take it on fully. I know I'm going to give Shelley the soapbox. You insert the brand of soap, but I know you've got a new study to talk about, so please.
Yeah, the collective is launching a new study today. It should come out. There'll be an article breaking in, and we'll release the study. But it was the biggest study that's been done in this space, either to date or in a very long time. Over 8,700 women around the world were interviewed, and it's not just about women's sports. It's actually just about women in the world and their attitudes and beliefs, and kind of they control over $3 trillion in spending. And if you think household goods and consumer goods in sports, because of raising families and participating in and around sport, those are two major areas where her influence is obviously huge. And there's almost $1 trillion in advertising spending on an annual basis. If half of your consumers are feeling a bit misunderstood, which they are still, there's a lot of money on the table and a lot of opportunity, just as we're talking about here, to engage these women in unique and different ways through partnerships, through influencers, through creation of content that makes sense to them in the stage of life that they're in. And I know it comes as no surprise, but Gen Z think about it very differently than millennials, than Gen X and boomers. And now fragmentation, sometimes we say it and it's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Just make it work for you. Make the model or the portfolio work for you. But I think what you'll see come out when you read the study is if we can communicate with them in the right way, sport or not sport, they move faster with brands. They're more likely to stay loyal. 72% of them are loyal to the things that work and understand them. And so kind of the sky's the limit because that's where the money is flowing. So with that in mind, I think the title of this was What's Hot and What's Not. I think figuring out how to best communicate with women is the next hot thing beyond women's sports, right? Them as fans and consumers. So you're welcome.
There you go.
We can clap.
Yeah. Can we clap? But it's really great.
As part of the Wasserman team.
Yeah, I know. I said Wasserman. No, they're all right here.
Oh, okay.
But
Paid placement.
yeah, that's exactly it. Thank you. I'll send you $20 later. But the other thing, the global attitudes are very different. So we talk a lot about kind of globalization of sport. Women in Australia have very different things than they're facing in Saudi. There's all this growth in the Middle East. And so, I mean, this is a big part of this too, as we actually are talking to women in the Middle East. And they face very different financial pressures and household pressures and the role that they play. And so that, I think, all has to be considered now because we are just on a global stage, period, whether you're talking to a U.S. rights holder or not. Because we want all of those eyeballs. To John's point on how huge World Cup is and billions of viewers and so on, we kind of have no choice but to understand this and to go where the money is, and that's with women moving forward.
Okay, so let me take you back a couple sentences. You said women are feeling misunderstood, and other than the usual men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
They get the planets right? What are they feeling misunderstood about?
I think just the understanding kind of their navigation of life and the generational shifts, right? Like our priorities all change from when we're young and single and working and doing our thing and, you know, going to 5 concerts a week, whatever it might be, to when you're managing a house, managing your earning power, managing a career, managing, you know, insert thing here, but that you can actually follow them through their life stages. And remember, a lot of money is sitting with Gen X and boomers, and the brands and connection points are very geared towards millennials and Gen Z. Not a bad thing, but you have to find those places to bridge them together so that you can still make sure you're engaging the folks who are spending the most money.
Yeah.
This group that's coming up is going to be fantastic, but we just have to let them get there, get into the kind of the heart of their earning power, and then we'll see kind of that money continue. So,
Chuck, I believe we're pretty far past the point where companies and brands know, well, we need to get a bucket of that women's stuff. Everyone's telling me that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get, do they know what to do with it once they get it now?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, and it depends on the brand that your brand's role with women and in their life or in their household. So instead of, it might not be for me, but it might be for someone in my house.
Yeah.
And you know that as a brand steward, 100%. I mean, half of that's why we're all here in terms of connecting consumers and fans together. We know that sport and entertainment plays a role in their lives. So I think it's the brand, it's the objective, and you know the role that it plays. So by no means are we saying women are disadvantaged in this sense. It's just there's money we're leaving on the table if we're missing the chance to understand them at each of their life stages.
Chuck, all your clients are coming in saying, I need some of that. Everyone tells me, my consumers are telling me I better get invested in this. Has the strategy matured beyond that? I mean, it's somewhat client specific, I realize.
I think it's come along 2 or 3 years ago. If you asked me about the topic, I was more on the side of I wanted the space to evolve for the right marketing reasons versus just what people felt like was sort of something that they needed to do good as. And I think now it is absolutely emerged as a 100% viable engagement marketing channel that people can invest in and see real results in. That comes with a lot of obviously benefit as well. So I think with all that has transpired in the last 3 years, call it, we're also like at the doorstep of a whole new era, I think, when it comes to women's sports and engaging with women's sports. So while we've seen so much change in the last couple of years, I still think we're like right at the forefront of, if we look back 5 years from now, we will say, man, we were in the infancy of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
John, I think it was 2.4 million people watching women's softball last weekend on ESPN. I mean, that's pretty impressive to me. But again, how mature is it? What do your clients want to do with it? Do they know what to do with it? I'm still kind of at the, we know we need some. How do we use that to move products or services?
Well, I mean, obviously, we have a lot of CPG clients.
Yep.
And a lot of those decisions are, made by mom or the female.
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Although, they also are kind of the quarterback to execute the play that sometimes the kids want, right?
Yeah.
Or, I have certain preferences maybe on beer,
Maybe.
Yeah. And so therefore, they're going to obviously execute what I want. But, look, I mean, the softball thing that you touched on, the pitcher from Texas Tech or, my alma mater are obviously the national champs,
Yeah.
which is a great thing, hook 'em horns. But it's all driven by the personalities. And so that's why, like, to follow, certain sport, you gotta build the brands, not to talk about the men's team again, but, it really kind of pisses me off that they don't see what an opportunity they have. They're going to get one shot in their lifetime to play on this big a stage in their home country. And I think back to 1994 World Cup, first of all, it birthed the Major League Soccer League 2 years later in '96. But all those guys like Alexi Lalas and, Eric Winalda and Tony Meola and Kobe Jones, all those guys were household names, and they only got to the round of 16 and they got beat. Could you imagine like what U.S. soccer, if they even got to the quarterfinals, they'd be legends. God forbid they win the World Cup.
If you talk to any hockey players, they'll always say that Lake Placid was what put them over the top.
Exactly. So, so going back to, whether it's women's sports, I mean, look, the Dallas Wings, I know the ownership group, and a couple of years ago, they were valued at $8 million. And like an idiot, I didn't invest. And now they're getting a new arena in downtown Dallas. And they picked up Paige Beckers, right, with the number 1 pick, and now they're valued at $200 million. But all of that is, the Angel Reeses and the Asia Wilsons and the Caitlin Clarks and the Paige Beckers. And so, I think that, it's all sports is driven by the personalities and the brands of the participants. So,
No question.
that's what going back to something that Greg said about social media. I mean, that's, all these guys have their own platforms, right? Whether it's Brady or whether it's, the Kelsey brothers and that's a good place to invest as well.
Absolutely.
I don't think you're giving the brand marketers that are investing in women's sports enough credit. I haven't seen, whether I represent them or not, a lot of brands that aren't doing it for the right reasons and doing it the right way. And I don't think it's a check the box or the CEO saying, hey, what's this, like, we should be doing something. I think there's just a credible opportunity there. And we've seen, 2.4 million for softball. We're seeing the WNBA. The media platforms and the audience that's there means it's a huge opportunity. And it's not just a check the box.
Right. Well,
It's good business.
Well, and the other interesting thing is there's this women's sports kind of cause-related thing that it seems like marketers should be able to tap into. There's many kind of rooting for women's sports as they are for whatever the team is.
Sure, you could tap into it, but you don't need to, because you asked earlier in terms of where else are folks investing. They're investing in startup leagues. They're investing in places where fans are super engaged. And we know fans outperform in engagement and advocacy around women's sports. You're 100% right, Greg. And it is just good business at this point. So the audiences might be smaller when you're comparing it to something that's been around for 100 years. But at the same time, if that's the target you're going after, go to the place they're most engaged. Yeah. And that brings women's sports to the forefront in a lot of cases for a lot of audiences. It might not be for everyone, but you have so much choice now, and as marketers, this fragmentation gives you the chance to move dollars around and connect with the fans where they are, right? So I thank you, Greg, for saying that, because I think it is critical. We have turned that corner now. And then our task now is to stop talking about the boom that it is and operationalize it. Let's go and make it better and better. So.
Same question back to you, Tuck. What are you telling your clients? What are they telling you when it comes to actually doing something with these rights?
I mean, look, I think good business is the phrase for this conversation. I think it is, and I think operationalizing is another good point, and just maybe start just talking about it as this is a consumer segment that we're really interested in for business purposes, and how can we engage with them in authentic ways wherever they may be, regardless of the scale. I think you're going to see great results.
John?
Cowboys, Eagles.
Yeah, exactly. Best investment, do you have a favorite best investment, best activation of women's that you've seen so far?
I don't know. I like. I think Ally has done a great job in the sport. You know, there's. I don't know that there's one that really breaks through, but you know, look. I mean, I think it's changed from like. Hey, we want to support it, kind of like Title IX, to now it's a credible, you know, it's a legit investment, right? You know, WNBA, you know, whatever. So
well, and as you point out, the price they're getting for franchises or the valuations, that should tell you as much as you need to know, right?
Yeah, I mean, 200, you know, 8 million to 200 million in the past, whatever, half dozen years. I mean, so it's. You know, I mean, and certainly, you know, look, I mean, the FIFA World Cup for women's coming back to the United States in 31. So, you know, I mean, we're going to be doing this all again. And oh, by the way, the women are better. Right?
Historically, they've been better. Yeah.
You know, people talk about men and women's sports. I'd like to see our women play on the men's team.
Yeah, that's one reason the women's soccer teams got better valuations
I'm all
earlier.
for that, yeah.
Absolutely.
But Carly Lloyd out there, she kicked somebody.
All right, we're at zeros, so please thank the panelists and thank you for coming. I'm turning it over to Austin.